So the Indiana Fever seem to have figured it out. They seem to have absolutely figured it out. Like, yesterday was a pretty good game, and they figured out how to best give them a chance to win. And ironically, it might destroy the entire sport in the process. The best chance for the Indiana Fever to win right now, and I'm not talking long term. Again, this is an incompetent franchise. They haven't won in a decade. They're not going to be a 500 team for quite a while. They are completely, and I mean completely, incompetent as a franchise. But with the players that they have right now, they've actually, if you look at when they looked like they're at their best, they have figured out to make this team look like they're at their best. Bench Caitlin Clark. That's actually, I can't believe I'm actually saying it, but it is bench. It is like bench their best player, because the whole team. Let's just say, hypothetically, like you've got a run of the mill car. The car works fine. The car works completely fine, but you replace the engine with a $1 million state of the art, unbelievably good Ferrari engine. I don't know anything about cars, but I'm assuming that car probably wouldn't work as well as the engine that's meant to be there for it. The part that's meant to be there for the car. Like, when something is in a situation like the Fever, and I don't mean a particularly good situation. I mean, you've got a back to the basket post up player surrounded by Julian Newman, the highest paid player in the league, who's not very good. A couple of 3 and no D players, because there's no 3 and D player on that team, and a post player who just has got good hands in Alyssa Smith. That team, as bad as they've been, as bad as they are, like as far as not fitting, you can at least play a play style with that team and win a couple of games. You can at least win a couple of games with that team. What you can't win with is Steve Nash, is the female Steve Nash, which realistically what Caitlin Clark is. If you look at just how she plays, the tempo she plays at, I know she shoots the ball from deep and people call her a female Curry. No, Curry's a very different player and how he plays off the ball. You've got a female Steve Nash, a Showtime point guard who runs the floor better than anybody, who, like, in a run and gun style is exceptional. It just doesn't mesh. It does not mesh. It really, really doesn't mesh. And I think the Fever have figured out how they can win a few more games. Like, long term, is it going to work well? No, but nothing since Tamika Catchings has worked for the Fever. So what is the point of expecting this competent franchise to be able to do anything? And ironically, trying to turn Steve, like, it would be like trying to turn Steve Nash into Mario Chalmers. Like, they need her basically to play the Mario Chalmers. And, like, Christie Sides has come out and said it. They want to work through the post. The problem is that, like, once the ball goes into the post, the only pass with her back to the basket that Aliyah Boston will make is to a cutter. The only pass she will make is to a cutter. And the problem is, with the way Caitlin Clark's being guarded, being constantly just face guarded and everything, she's not going to get open off a cut, ever. So, it is what it is. Like, the only use Caitlin Clark has in the way Indiana are playing right now is gravity. And I'm going to be honest, if we're talking purely from a basketball perspective, Caitlin Clark should not be starting for the Indiana Fever. And this is not saying Caitlin Clark's not the best player in the Fever, but if your goal is to win games right now, and you are saying we're going to play, I think, what was it? She said she wants to play inside out. No, they don't play inside out. They play inside and the ball stays. Once the ball hits the post, whether it's Alyssa Smith or Aliyah Boston, that ball is not coming back out. And that's fine. If that's the way, if you want to play like smash mouth basketball, if you want to play grind it out inside basketball, that is cool. That is cool. But you can't have a rhythm shooter. Because there are some players, if you know anything about basketball, there are some players that are very good in like if they don't touch the ball for 6 or 7 possessions, they're fine. They're going to catch it. They're going to be ready to shoot. It's not really going to affect their percentages. A low volume of shots isn't going to affect their percentages. Problem is, Caitlin Clark's a rhythm shooter. She needs a lot of shots. She needs to be shooting in rhythm. And as a knock to her, she shoots frustration shots. When she touches the ball after not touching it for 6 possessions in a row, she's going to chuck no matter what. She's going to take a bad shot, and she has missed every frustration shot she has taken this season that as far as I can remember anyway. She's missed every single one of them. And that is the problem when you have Caitlin Clark on the floor with the grinded out basketball. And you might be saying, oh, but like she needs to just fit in. Do you want Caitlin Clark to just go stand in the corner? Like, a player who has never played that style of basketball can't just simply fit in. If you want Caitlin Clark to stand in the corner, there are 10 better players that you can find overseas at doing that than she is. There are better players not in the WNBA. If you want her to just stand in the corner and do nothing else, Celeste Taylor is a better player than Caitlin Clark, who gets 0 minutes because Celeste Taylor is a better defender than Caitlin Clark. If you are not allowing Caitlin Clark to run, she should not be on the floor. And this is not like a learning thing. This is not like a, she needs to fit in. Because she's just not capable of being a stand in the corner player. You can tell with her mentality. Everyone being like, oh, Boston and Caitlin Clark going to be like Kobe and Shaq. Well, 1, Kobe was a different type of scorer to Caitlin Clark. 2, Shaquille O'Neal was, again, he was able to roll. He ran the floor. He dunked everything around the basket. And the difference is it's a different game. It's a completely different game. Like, the little and large pairing can work. Not when the large is like Jalil Okafor. Like, it's just not. It's like trying to pair Steve Nash with Jalil. Or not even Steve Nash with Jalil. Let's say Steve Nash with Al Jefferson. It's not going to work. Hey, you need an Amare for a Steve Nash player to run the pick and roll, to run that 7 seconds of offense. Like, we saw how much Steve Nash struggled early on in his career because they couldn't really find a role for him. The difference is that as the NBA evolved, and teams got faster and the play got faster, Steve Nash's role became more defined. Like, Steve Nash outside of Phoenix, he was an all-star in Dallas, but outside of Phoenix, he wasn't this superstar. And that's the problem with Caitlin Clark, is that outside of Iowa, she's not a superstar. And that's not a knock on her, because there are systems that I can guarantee you will succeed. But you have to get the right players around her. Like, you've got to get like a Temi Fagbenle. You've got to get like these type of players in an entire system. But if you're not running that system, Caitlin Clark is actually useless out there. So when we're looking at what the Fever figured out, they figured out that the whole team plays better with Aliyah Boston on the floor. Aliyah Boston as the focal point. They do. The other players pass Aliyah Boston the ball. I'm going to make another video about that, but they just don't like passing the ball to Caitlin Clark. They will pass Aliyah Boston the ball. They will work for Aliyah Boston. They cut off her, and the only use Caitlin Clark has is sometimes in the pick and roll with Aliyah Boston. Aliyah Boston's still not even a good roller. I still think that the team looks better. I think the team has looked at its best because we also have taken into account they beat a terrible Atlanta Dream team yesterday. Atlanta were so bad yesterday. But when they nearly beat Connecticut, and they should have beat Connecticut and they should have beat Seattle, they were at their best when Caitlin Clark and Temi Fagbenle were on the floor running. The problem is, with Temi not there, Caitlin Clark has looked garbage. Other than against Washington, where she just said, screw this, I'm shooting every time I touch the ball. And then she shot enough shots to get in the rhythm, and she got into a rhythm, because that's the type of shooter she is. She's looked terrible. Like, I don't think that she should be on the floor if Temi Fagbenle is not on the floor. Like, I genuinely think that Celeste Taylor, and this is, again, not a knock on Caitlin Clark. I think Caitlin Clark is the best player in this rookie class. Don't get it twisted. But it would be like asking Tyrese Halliburton, who pushes the floor, runs up and down, to play with Joel Embiid. Like, yeah, sure, they can still look fine, but like Joel Embiid, actually, that's probably not a good example because Embiid's 100 times faster than Aliyah Boston. It would be like asking Steve Nash to play with Al Jefferson. That's the comparison. Al Jefferson has had success with teams. A team could win 35, 40 games without running through Al Jefferson in the post, but that team couldn't make the next step. Whereas running through Steve Nash has shown you can win 60 games. Like, it is what it is. I think long term, they got to make a decision for one or the other. But I think short term, if they're looking to put butts in seats, you just let Caitlin Clark do whatever the hell she wants. But I genuinely think that it is a better option to sit Caitlin Clark rather than tell her to go stand in the corner. Because if you're telling her to go stand in the corner, she is legitimately not as good as Celeste Taylor. At that role, by the way. And it's not like, and you're saying, oh, she needs to learn to play that role. If you are trying to turn Caitlin Clark into a corner-sitting, spot-up shooter to stand there and watch Aliyah Boston, then it is basketball malpractice. Sitting Caitlin Clark on a bench because she doesn't fit your play style, you know what? That is a basketball decision I don't agree with, but it makes sense. Telling Caitlin Clark to be a spot-up 3-and-D player is malpractice because she's garbage at it, and also, like, it's going to frustrate her. You can see how frustrated she is playing that role, and then when she's not, like, she's going to be annoyed when she comes on the floor. If you want to run through Aliyah Boston, bring Caitlin Clark off the bench, or at least make Caitlin Clark the first sub. Make Clark the first sub, get Erica Wheeler in early, and when you're giving Aliyah Boston a rest, bring Caitlin Clark in for 15 minutes a game as a bench player. For all people being like, oh, she's a rookie, she needs to learn. You know what? Let her at least play her style for 15 minutes when Aliyah Boston's not on the floor. Because 15 minutes of Caitlin Clark actually being Caitlin Clark is going to be more beneficial for your team of trying to turn Caitlin Clark into either Julie Vanloo or just go stand in the corner, be our Christy Wallace Caitlin Clark. So, I don't know. I think they figured it out. They really have figured it out. The team is better with Aliyah Boston. But it is at the detriment to the golden goose, I guess.